Well, hey there, how you doing? I hope you're well. My name's Paul, this is Plan Z, and welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about my bass rig and how I route it. I'm going to be going into a patch settings in a minute on the Bass GT1000. I just want to quickly tell you before we dive into that settings view, a couple of quick things about the routing that are very interesting and explain to you the sound that I'm trying to sculpt here. But if you're a bass player, you might be aware of the Sire P-Bass, Marcus Miller. I've got the version 2 here in the Swamp Ash. We're going to be using the neck pickup. I've got just a touch of the tone rolled back as well. And I've got a bass patch set up here that I'm routing an HXeffects 5-cable method. So I'm using it as a stomp box, so it allows me to put effects either before or after my amp in the Bass GT1000. How I got to using the Bass GT1000 for my bass rig is I had it as a guitar rig, and I needed to get a bass rig. And then Boss brought out the version 3 update that gave us bass rig, which is brilliant. It allows me to route my bass through the GT1000, and I do that using a wet dry wet method. Don't know what that click was. Using a wet dry wet method. There, what's going on, and you'll see in the patch settings, I've got the all the frequencies below 100 hertz. So if you're wearing headphones, you'll hear this. If you're listening to it on a phone, you probably won't. I'm gonna go down all the way to my low B. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is switch to what my A channel is, and this is coming out the main left right. So my sub is going out of the subs, and my main left right is handling the amps and all the wet effects. So what's going on there is I've got a natural amp. Remember, there's nothing below 100 hertz on this. And then I've got a... Ooh, sorry about that. That is an X drive amp, and it sounds a bit thin, a bit MIDI, a bit clanky, a bit toppy, but I want that to cut through because when I combine the two, so now I'm going to bring in the 100 hertz, below 100 hertz with the X drive. You feel that? Okay, so now we're just going to pop a little bit of reverb on that. It's quite wet, got a very long, in fact there's a lot of bit of reverb. Okay, and what's happening there is I've got a side chain happening with my reverb, so my bass still cuts through really present and clean. It's not touching the low end because I've got it coming out of the sub, and the effect is happening on the left-right. And if I want to juice up that reverb, yeah, there's a tremolo there on that side chain. So, but for this song, what I actually want is I want a bit of an octaver on there. So I've got that coming from my HXeffects. I could put it on the Boss, but I actually, for this tune, I prefer the tone of this one. So this is what I'm running with. So if you've got any kind of stomp box, you can put that in the front end of your GT1000 and add your effects there if they're preamp. Just remember you're stacking after that. Okay, so what I've done to give us some context. Remember here, if you're like a rock bass player, these sounds might not be for you, but the routing might be of interest in a second because you're going to be able to really kick in your low end if you want to do that. You can manage things differently. So yeah, hold on tight if you're a rocker and you're not into this music, but there might be something of interest for you in a second. So, because I'm going to be layering a second bass part in a second. So I'm just going to give us a beat. I've already recorded it in on the looper. Here we go. And I'm just going to bring in a bit of a shaker. And I've got a guitar that I recorded. I'm just waiting for the round now, and I'm going to start playing. and then I'll take a loop. Okay, so that's nice. And what I want to do is I want to drop in a heavier bass line with another drum beat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the reverb off, I'm going to remove the low end, and I'm going to add a distortion. Not just yet, I'm not. Forgot to take the bloody octaver off. So with the octaver off, here we go. Okay, now I've got my loop. And what allows me to layer those two is being able to manage taking that low end away so they're not fighting each other. It's just the low mids of the second bass line that are sweeping through. So I'm just going to leave it with the two bass lines for a second. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the settings. Hopefully that made sense there. I'll listen to this in a second, see if it did, and maybe I'll have to re-record it. I think I got into a bit of a muddle there, but we'll see how we get on. If not, we'll be diving into settings about now. Okay guys, so here we are. This is our patch. I've got the lights off, so it's a bit dark. I can't really see what I'm doing, but you can see here, hopefully, that we come in. What you should know is I've got a compressor on the front end coming from the HXeffects. So that compressor is positioned around here, albeit it shows up here in my send return. And what happens is the signal comes in and divides into A and B. So what I'm going to do now is just using my control switches here. I'm now going to move just to this lower channel. So I'm going to scroll across, and all we've got going on here is you can see I've got my sub out speakers positioned here within this first divide, and that is all of my low signal going through there. So what happens is I hit a second compressor here because I wanted to up the low end on this. I tried the compressor after the EQ, but it didn't give me the bottom end I wanted for this tune. And then I've got an EQ here, and what's going on, there's a little bump there in the level, but I'm boosting 50 hertz only by a couple of points. I'm boosting, I think, 80 hertz by a couple of points. I can't quite see the screen the same way you can at the moment in this position, but I've got, importantly, my high cut is coming down to 80 here, and my low cut is only going to about 25. In fact, I'm going to take that to 31. Now I'm going to come back through into channel 1, which has got the left rights happening up here, and then if I scroll all the way down this way, I want to go back to the beginning of my divide to talk you through what happens here. So I'm going to put it on so both the channels are on, so you can see what's happening. When it's in dual mode, I don't need this dynamic on, but what I do want is this filter, and I've got a high pass filter on channel A, so everything above 100 hertz is going from the high pass filter there. So I've distracted my finger, I realized you couldn't see what I was pointing at. And then if I go across to the next page, I've got a low pass filter sending all the low frequencies to 100 below 100 hertz. Okay, so now when I separate those up, that's the low one, that's the top one, and I've done the same cut within the EQ blocks in the respective chains. So coming into this chain, I've just got a natural amp there and a bit of an EQ. Now in this EQ, all I'm really doing let's have a look, is I'm poised to take 125 hertz out there, but I've got to cut. I'm cutting to 5k, and I'm cutting to 100k, just so that when the channel goes to single, that filter's still working for me. Okay, that's what that sounds like. Then in the B channel, I've got the X drive bass. Here I haven't got any EQ on it, we've got noise gates on both. Now, the EQ that sits on both and the compressor here, what I'm doing in this first EQ is I'm just managing the low mid, so I'm taking a cut around 3.5. Just to note, on my previous bass was a cheaper Ibanez bass, and I did an EQ sweep, so I'm going to post in the comments, not in the comments, but in the description below of this video, an EQ sweep video I did for the guitar. Use that same technique on your bass to find the nasty frequency. This bass doesn't have any, so I can just cut and boost what I want for the tune. But that other bass had a really nasty frequency at around 160 hertz. But this doesn't have that, so there I don't have to take anything out, put anything in. Sorry, having a faff. But I've increased my high cut here at 4, and I put the low cut in again because I've not got it here on this first chain. Now in the second EQ, usually I'm trying to pick out some of the frequencies to boost. So here I'm boosting 400 hertz. Again, I did a sweep, but I know on a bass 400 is a lovely tone to pull out. And on I did a sweep around 1.0 to 1.6. You'll find your the top end of your fingers there to cut in over the top. So let's bring in that low end again. Sorry for knocking the camera there. Now we've got a compressor. I'm not going to go into real detail on those settings because you'll have your own tones that you're searching for, own style of music. But I want to show you a side chain. Now what's going on here is I put the divide in, and when I engage my reverb, you'll see the reverb's already on. I've covered this in a previous video, and the divide is what switches on when I hit my reverb, and there's the reverb, and it stays wet. Let me go into the settings of that. So what's going on here, I've got it really wet, but importantly, when I come across, you'll see there's no dry level coming into this. So the dry signal you're hearing is going out of the top side of this channel. Okay, so if I then put a tremolo after that and set it so it's quite high on the effect, and has all of the direct mix coming through. The direct mix is only receiving the reverb, remember, in this channel. So it just plays with the reverb and doesn't put the trem on the bass itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch off those channels and switch to the low end channel, and you can just hear there's no effect on my sub out. It's all happening on the upper channel. Okay, so then what I do in the tune is I switch off the reverb. I put on a distortion, and that's coming from my HXeffects. I'll just show you what it is quickly, but what makes that sit is when I drop the bass line, I hit a control switch here that takes away this low end, because I've already got the low end in the first bass line, and all you're hearing is what's coming from my X drive and this distortion, which is this. Okay, and so that's how I get those two to sit. Hopefully that's clear. I'll have a look through. I feel a bit muddled today. This virus is kind of, your head feels fatigued and easily confused, so bear with. Hope you're safe and well wherever you are, and hopefully this works out. Speak to you in a bit.